You're nothing. The words didn't just land, they echoed, sharp and clean, slicing through the soft hum of clinking glasses and quiet laughter in the ballroom. Olivia Carter stood frozen beneath the warm golden lights, her fingers still curled around the edge of a champagne tray she was no longer supposed to be holding. Around her, designer dresses shimmered, tailored suits moved with effortless confidence, and for a moment, it felt like the entire room had tilted, like everyone had heard exactly what he said, and worse, agreed. Ryan Cole didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. His tone was calm, almost bored, as if stating something obvious, something already decided long before tonight. You don't belong here, Olivia. A faint smirk tugged at his lips as he glanced at the delicate ring she wore, simple, modest, something she had once thought meant promise. Without another word, he reached forward, slipped it off her finger, and placed it back into her palm like it was nothing more than loose change. I made a mistake. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy. Watching. Waiting. Olivia felt her throat tighten, her pulse roaring in her ears louder than the music, louder than the whispers beginning to ripple through the crowd. She could feel their eyes, the curious, the judgmental, the quietly satisfied. She swallowed, forcing her chin up, even as her chest burned with something dangerously close to breaking. Right, she managed, her voice softer than she intended, but steady enough to hold. She turned, careful, controlled, placing the tray down on a nearby table before anyone could see her hands tremble. This was supposed to be just another shift. For hours of smiling, serving, blending into the background of a world that was never meant for her. Instead, it became a spotlight she never asked for. As she stepped toward the exit, heels clicking against polished marble, the room seemed to part just slightly, enough to let her pass, but not enough to hide the glances trailing behind her. Almost there, she told herself. Just a few more steps. Just get out. But then, Miss Carter. The voice came from behind her, low, composed, unfamiliar. Not curious. Not mocking. Something else. Olivia paused. Just for a second. Long enough for the moment to shift again. Slowly, she turned. And that's when she saw him. Ethan Hayes stood a few feet away, his presence quiet but unmistakable, like he didn't need attention because the room had already given it to him. His suit was impeccable, his expression unreadable, his gaze fixed entirely on her, not the scene, not the whispers, just her. For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. Then his eyes flicked briefly to the ring still clenched in her hand before returning to her face. You dropped something, he said, though they both knew she hadn't. Olivia let out a small, breathless laugh, more reflex than humor. No, she replied softly, closing her fingers around it. I think I just picked it up. Something shifted in his expression then. Not pity. Not sympathy. Recognition. Like he understood more than he was saying. He took a single step closer, lowering his voice just enough that the world outside them blurred. Good, he said. A pause. Then, calm and precise, because I might have a use for you. Olivia did not move right away. The noise of the ballroom returned in slow waves behind her, like the world had decided to keep going whether she caught up or not. Her fingers tightened around the ring in her palm, its edges pressing into her skin just enough to remind her that this was real, that a few seconds ago she had been standing in a different version of her life. She met Ethan Hayes' gaze again, searching for something, mockery, curiosity, anything that would make this easier to dismiss. But there was none. He looked at her the way someone studies a problem worth solving. A use for me? She repeated quietly, one brow lifting despite everything. There was a flicker of defiance in her voice now, something steadier, something that had survived the humiliation. Ethan gave a small nod, as if confirming a thought he had already made up. You handled that better than most people in this room would have, he said. His tone was calm, measured, not a compliment thrown casually but an observation placed with intent. Olivia let out a breath she did not realize she was holding. I am not sure. Standing there and getting humiliated counts as handling it well. You did not beg, he replied. You did not argue. You walked away. His eyes held hers for a beat longer. That matters. She almost laughed again, but this time it came out softer, tired. It does not change anything. No, Ethan agreed. But it tells me something about you. The silence stretched just long enough to feel deliberate. Around them, conversations resumed, glasses clinked, a server brushed past with a polite apology, but the space between them felt separate, like a quiet pocket carved out of the noise. Olivia shifted her weight slightly, her heels beginning to ache, the long shift and longer night catching up with her all at once. Look, Mr. Hayes, Ethan, he corrected smoothly. She hesitated, then continued. Ethan. I do not know what you think you saw, but I am just someone who needs to get through the rest of her shift and figure out where she is sleeping next week. I do not have time for whatever this is. For the first time, something almost like amusement touched his expression. Not mocking. Interested. That is exactly why you should listen, he said. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a simple, matte black business card, holding it between two fingers before offering it to her. Olivia glanced at it but did not take it yet. I do not need a job offer out of pity, she said, her voice firm again, grounding itself. This is not pity, Ethan replied without hesitation. It is strategy. That made her pause. Slowly, cautiously, she took the card. The name was familiar even before she fully read it. Hayes Group. She had heard it in passing, in conversations she was never part of, attached to numbers too large to imagine. Her eyes lifted back to him. What kind of strategy involves me? A very specific one, he said. He stepped just a little closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. In 3 weeks, I need to close a deal worth over $40 million. The only thing standing in the way is perception. Olivia frowned slightly. Perception of what? Of me, he answered simply. Or more precisely, of the kind of life I represent. She blinked, not fully. Following yet. And where do I come in? Ethan held her gaze, steady, certain. I need someone who does not look like she belongs in my world, he said. Someone real. Someone they will not expect. A beat passed. Then, without changing his tone, he added, I need a fiancé. The word landed differently than Ryan's had. Not dismissive. Not cruel. Controlled. Intentional. Olivia stared at him, her mind catching up in fragments. You are joking. I do not joke about business, Ethan replied. This would be a contract. Temporary. Structured. You would attend events with me, meet the people who matter, and help shift a narrative that currently works against me. She shook her head slowly, a disbelieving smile forming despite herself. You just watched my boyfriend tell me I am nothing, and your solution is to pretend I am something else. No, Ethan said quietly. My solution is to show them what they failed to see. The words hung there, heavier than they should have been. Olivia looked down at the ring in her hand, then back at the card, then finally at him. Somewhere in the distance, she caught Ryan's voice again, laughing too easily, already moved on. Something inside her tightened, and then steadied. And what happens when your deal is done? She asked. Ethan did not hesitate. We walk away. Another pause. But until then, he added, his voice softening just slightly, no one gets to call you nothing. Olivia did not answer right away. The card felt heavier than it should have in her hand, like it carried more than just a name and a company. She glanced past Ethan for a moment, her eyes instinctively finding Ryan across the room, already leaning in toward someone else, already laughing like nothing had happened, like she had never mattered at all. The sting was still there, sharp and fresh, but something else was rising beneath it now, quieter, steadier. She looked back at Ethan. A contract, she repeated slowly, as if testing how the word felt out loud. You want me to pretend to be your fiancé so people take you more seriously? Not exactly, Ethan said. I want them to question what they think they know. She let out a small breath, somewhere between disbelief and reluctant curiosity. And you think I am the answer to that? I think you are the disruption, he replied. And right now, disruption is exactly what I need. Olivia studied him more carefully this time, really looking. There was no hesitation in his posture, no flicker of doubt in his voice. He was not guessing. He had already decided. That realization made something shift again inside her. What does this contract actually look like? She asked. Ethan reached into his jacket once more, this time pulling out a slim folded document. He handed it to her without ceremony. Simple terms, he said. For weeks. 5 public appearances. You attend as my fiancé. You present yourself however you choose, but you stay consistent. No personal interference beyond agreed boundaries. Full discretion. In return, you are compensated. Olivia glanced down at the paper, her eyes scanning quickly until they caught the number. She blinked once, certain she had read it wrong, then looked again. It was not wrong. Her grip tightened slightly. This is more than I make in a year, she said quietly. I am aware, Ethan replied. Then why me? She asked, her voice sharper now, needing something real, something honest. Because you did not break, he said simply. Most people would have tried to prove him wrong in that moment. You did not. You walked away with your dignity intact. That is not common. She shook her head slightly. It did not feel like dignity. It rarely does, he said. For a second, neither of them spoke. The noise of the room pressed in again, but it felt distant, irrelevant. Olivia looked back down at the contract, her thoughts racing faster now. Rent due in 3 days. The warning from her landlord still echoing. The second job she might lose after tonight. The quiet fear of not knowing what came next. Then she looked at the ring still in her hand, small, simple, discarded like it had never meant anything. Her fingers slowly curled around it. For weeks, she said under her breath. For weeks, Ethan confirmed. She lifted her gaze to his again, searching for any sign that this was a game, a setup, something she would regret the second she said yes. But all she found was certainty. Calm. Control. And when it is over, she said carefully, we go back to being strangers. Exactly, he said. Olivia let out a long breath, the kind that comes before a decision that changes everything. Then, almost without realizing it, she straightened her shoulders. Not as a server. Not as someone trying to disappear. As someone stepping into something unknown. All right, she said. I will do it. There was no dramatic pause, no hesitation once the words left her mouth. Just a quiet shift in the air between them. Ethan nodded once, like he had expected nothing less. Good, he said. He reached out, not for the contract, but for her hand. Olivia hesitated for half a second, then let him take it. His grip was firm, steady, not possessive, just certain. He slid a pen into her fingers. Then let us make it official, he said. Olivia glanced down at the signature line, her name waiting there, ordinary and unchanged. For a brief moment, she thought about walking away, about choosing the familiar struggle over whatever this was. But then Ryan's voice echoed in her mind again, clear as if he were standing right beside her. You are nothing. Her jaw tightened slightly. Without another thought, she pressed the pen to paper and signed. When she looked up again, something had shifted. Not in the room. Not in the people around them. In her. Ethan released her hand and folded the contract neatly. First event is in 48 hours, he said. We start immediately. Olivia nodded slowly, still adjusting to the weight of what she had just agreed to. And what happens between now and then, she asked. For the first time, a faint hint of something warmer touched his expression. We make them believe, he said. Then, after a brief pause, his eyes flicked once more to the ring still in her hand. But first, he added quietly, we replace that. The next 48 hours did not feel real. Olivia stood in front of a full-length mirror that cost more than her entire apartment rent for 6 months, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her. The dress was simple, but perfect, tailored to her frame as if it had always belonged there. Soft ivory silk, clean lines, nothing loud, nothing forced. Just effortless. She shifted slightly, watching how the fabric moved, how it caught the light. "I look like someone else," she said quietly. Behind her, a woman with a tablet smiled. "No," she replied. "You look like yourself, just without everything holding you back." Olivia did not know how to respond to that, so she said nothing. Everything since signing that contract had moved fast. Too fast to question, too precise to interrupt. Ethan had not hovered, had not micromanaged. He simply gave instructions, and somehow, everything aligned around them. Stylists. Advisors. A quiet team that worked like they already knew the outcome. And yet, through all of it, one thing remained unchanged. He never tried to change who she was. Comfortable. His voice came from the doorway. Olivia turned slightly, catching Ethan's reflection in the mirror before facing him fully. He looked exactly the same as he had 2 nights ago. Composed. Controlled. Like this world bent naturally around him. "I am not sure that is the word I would use," she admitted. A faint smile touched his lips. "Good. Comfortable is forgettable." He stepped further into the room, his eyes scanning her once, not in judgment, not in appraisal, but in quiet confirmation. "You do not need to impress them," he said. "You just need to be consistent." Olivia crossed her arms lightly, more out of habit than defense. "And who exactly am I supposed to be consistent as?" she asked. Ethan met her gaze without hesitation. "Someone who knows her worth," he said. The words landed differently now than they would have 2 days ago. Back then, they might have sounded like something she could not quite believe. Now, they felt like something she was being asked to prove. To herself as much as anyone else. She nodded slowly. "All right." There was a brief pause before Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Olivia's breath caught slightly before she could stop it. He stepped closer, opening it with a quiet click. Inside was a ring. Not oversized. Not exaggerated. But unmistakably real. The kind of piece that did not need attention because it commanded it anyway. Olivia stared at it for a second, her mind flashing back to the one still tucked away in her bag. The one Ryan had returned like it meant nothing. "This is part of the role," Ethan said, his voice steady, grounding the moment. "Nothing more." Olivia let out a soft breath, her fingers curling slightly at her sides. "Right," she said. "Nothing more." He held her gaze for a second longer, then gently took her hand. His touch was warm, firm, but careful. Not claiming. Not forcing. Just certain. As he slid the ring onto her finger, it fit perfectly. Of course it did. Everything about this situation was too precise to be accidental. Olivia looked down at it, the way the light caught along its surface, the way it felt, solid, present. Real in a way she had not expected. "You will need a backstory," Ethan continued, releasing her hand. "Something simple. We met through a mutual contact. We kept things private. Now we are ready to be public." Olivia nodded, her mind already trying to keep up. "And people will just believe that." "People believe what fits their expectations," he said. "Our job is to give them something they want to accept." She let that sink in, then glanced back at the mirror. For a moment, she tried to see herself the way others might tonight. Not as the girl who had been dismissed. Not as the one who barely kept things together. But as someone standing beside a man like Ethan Hayes, by choice. Her shoulders straightened slightly. Subtle, but real. "The event starts in 1 hour," Ethan said, checking his watch briefly. "Investors. Media. A few people who will be looking very closely. Olivia exhaled slowly, steadying herself. And what happens if I mess this up? She asked. Ethan looked at her, completely unshaken. You will not, he said. Not reassuring. Not hopeful. Certain. She held his gaze for a second longer, then gave a small nod. All right, she said again, but this time it sounded different. Stronger. More decided. As they moved toward the door, Olivia caught one last glimpse of herself in the mirror. The dress. The posture. The ring. And for the first time, the thought crossed her mind, not that she was pretending to be someone else. But that maybe she had never really seen who she could be until now. The car ride to the event was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Olivia sat beside Ethan in the back of a sleek black sedan, the city light sliding across the window like a moving reflection of a life she had never been part of until now. Her hand rested lightly on her lap, but her eyes kept drifting back to the ring, the way it caught even the faintest light. It still felt new. Not just the ring, but everything. Last chance to walk away, Ethan said without looking at her, his voice calm, almost casual. Olivia turned slightly, studying him. You say that like you expect me to. I say it because once we step out of this car, there is no hesitation, he replied. People will watch. They will look for inconsistencies. She nodded slowly. Then it is a good thing I am a fast learner. A faint hint of approval crossed his expression, subtle but there. The car slowed, then came to a smooth stop. Through the tinted window, Olivia could see flashes of light, cameras, movement. A crowd had already gathered. Her stomach tightened just slightly, but she did not let it show. Ethan stepped out first, the door opening with quiet precision. Then he turned, extending his hand toward her. This time, there was no hesitation. Olivia placed her hand in his and stepped out into a world that immediately noticed her. The flashes came first. Bright. Sudden. Followed by the low murmur of voices rising into something sharper, more focused. Names being called. Questions thrown into the air. Olivia felt it all at once, the weight of attention pressing in from every direction, but she kept her posture steady, her expression composed. Ethan's hand remained at her side, not gripping, not guiding, just there. A presence. A signal. Together, they moved forward. Ethan, is this your fiancé? Someone called out. We did not know you were engaged. Olivia felt the question land, felt the eyes shift toward her, measuring, analyzing. She did not rush her response. Instead, she turned slightly toward Ethan, her gaze softening just enough to look natural, not rehearsed. He glanced at her, then back at the crowd. We have kept things private, he said smoothly. Until now. Simple. Controlled. Exactly as planned. Olivia let a small, composed smile form, nothing exaggerated, nothing forced. Just enough to belong. They moved past the entrance, into the venue itself, where the noise shifted from chaotic to curated. Conversations paused as they entered, heads turning, eyes following. Olivia could feel it again, that same attention from 2 nights ago, but this time it was different. Not judgment. Curiosity. Interest. She walked beside Ethan, her steps measured, her shoulders relaxed, her gaze steady. Every movement felt deliberate now, not because she was pretending, but because she was choosing. A man approached them near the center of the room, older, sharp eyes, the kind that missed very little. Ethan, he said, extending a hand. You have been holding out on us. Ethan shook his hand without hesitation. Timing is everything, he replied. The man's gaze shifted to Olivia. And you must be the reason for that. Olivia met his eyes, calm, unshaken. I like to think I am part of the reason, she said. The man smiled slightly, impressed, or at least intrigued. I can see that. As he moved on, Olivia let out a slow breath she had been holding, just enough to release the tension without breaking her composure. Ethan leaned slightly closer, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "You are doing exactly what you should." Olivia glanced at him briefly. "And what is that?" she asked. "Making them wonder," he said. She let that settle, then allowed herself the smallest shift in perspective. 2 nights ago, she had stood in a room like this feeling invisible. Tonight, she was the center of questions no one could answer yet. And somewhere in that realization, something inside her aligned. Not forced. Not borrowed. Real. As she reached for a glass of water from a passing tray, her reflection caught briefly in the mirrored wall behind the bar. For a second, she paused. Not because she did not recognize herself this time, but because she did. And that was new. Very new. The room had settled into a rhythm now, one Olivia could almost predict if she paid close enough attention. Conversations rose and fell in measured waves, laughter timed just a second too late, glances exchanged with purpose rather than curiosity. But every few minutes, it shifted again. Someone new would notice her. Someone important enough to make others follow. And just like that, the attention returned. Not overwhelming. Not chaotic. Controlled. Focused. She was learning how to stand in it without shrinking. "You have already changed the tone of the room," Ethan said quietly as they paused near a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city. Olivia followed his gaze for a moment, watching the skyline stretch endlessly into the distance. "I am not doing anything," she replied. "Exactly," he said. She turned to him slightly, studying his expression. "You keep saying that like it is the plan." "It is," he said. "People expect effort when something is not real. They look for performance. You are not performing." Olivia considered that, then let out a small breath. "That might be the only part of this I can do without overthinking." A faint smile touched his lips. "Then keep doing that." Before she could respond, another voice joined them, smoother, more calculated. "Ethan Hayes rarely surprises me, but tonight," Olivia turned, her posture instinctively steadying as she faced a man approaching with quiet confidence. Late 40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. He extended his hand first to Ethan, then glanced toward her with clear interest. "I have to admit, I did not expect this." Ethan shook his hand, composed as ever. "Daniel Foster," he said. Still observing everything before deciding what to believe. The man, Daniel, gave a small chuckle. "That has kept me successful." His gaze returned to Olivia, lingering just long enough to be intentional. "And you must be the reason for this unexpected shift." Olivia met his eyes without hesitation, her expression calm, her voice steady. "Or maybe just part of it," she said. There was a brief pause, subtle but telling. Daniel's interest sharpened slightly, not just polite now, but engaged. "Interesting," he said. "Most people in this room try too hard to be noticed. You seem comfortable letting the room come to you." Olivia did. "Not look away." "Maybe I am just learning when not to chase attention," she replied. For a second, Daniel studied her more closely, then gave a small nod. "That is a rare instinct," he said. "Especially in this crowd." Ethan said nothing, but Olivia could feel the shift beside her. Not tension. Not discomfort. Something more strategic. Daniel turned back to him. "We should talk soon," he said. "About the deal?" Ethan nodded once. "We will." As Daniel moved on, Olivia exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxing just slightly. "Was that one of the people you meant?" she asked. "Yes," Ethan replied. "And you just gave him something he was not expecting." She glanced back toward the crowd, watching Daniel already speaking to someone else, but still occasionally looking in her direction. "I did not do anything," she said again, softer this time. "You changed his position," Ethan said. "Before tonight, he saw me as predictable. Now," he paused briefly. "Now he is curious." Olivia let that settle, the weight of it shifting something deeper inside her. This was not just about appearances. It was about influence. About perception. About moving pieces without making it obvious. She looked down at the ring again, then back at the room. And for the first time, she understood something clearly. This was not a performance she was trying to survive. It was a space she could learn to control. Just as she reached for another glass of water, a familiar voice cut through the noise behind her. Olivia. Everything in her stilled for half a second before she turned. Ryan stood a few feet away, his expression caught somewhere between disbelief and something sharper, something unsettled. His eyes dropped immediately to her hand, to the ring, to the man beside her. Then back to her face. "I did not realize you moved on this quickly," he said. Olivia held his gaze, calm, unreadable. Not defensive. Not hurt. Just steady. "I did not realize I was supposed to wait," she replied. The silence that followed felt different from before. This time, it was not heavy. It was shifting. And Ryan felt it too. Ryan took a step closer, not enough to invade her space, but enough to make it clear he was not leaving this moment unfinished. His eyes moved between Olivia and Ethan again, slower this time, more deliberate, as if trying to piece together something that did not fit the version of reality he had already accepted. "That is not what I meant," he said, his voice lowering slightly, attempting control, attempting familiarity. "I just did not think," he stopped, realizing too late that whatever he said next would only expose more than he intended. Olivia did not rush to fill the silence. She let it sit there, let him feel it, let him search for footing that no longer existed. "You did not think I would have options," she said calmly, finishing the thought for him. Ryan's jaw tightened just slightly, but he forced a small smile, one that did not quite reach his eyes. "That is not fair." "No," Olivia replied evenly. "It is accurate." The words landed clean, without sharpness, without raised volume, but they carried more weight than anything louder could have. Around them, the subtle shift had already begun. Conversation slowed, attention redirected, not openly staring, but listening just enough to understand what was unfolding. Ethan remained beside her, silent, composed, his presence steady but not overpowering. He did not interrupt. He did not need to. Ryan glanced at him briefly, then back to Olivia, something unsettled now beneath his usual confidence. "So this is real?" he asked, nodding slightly toward the ring on her hand. Olivia followed his gaze for a second, then looked back at him. "Does it matter?" she asked. Ryan let out a short breath, almost a laugh, but without humor. "It does if you are trying to make a point." Olivia tilted her head slightly, considering that. "Maybe I am not trying to make a point," she said. "Maybe I just stopped waiting for someone else to decide my value." That hit differently. Ryan felt it, and for a brief moment, he did not hide it. His eyes flickered, not with anger, but with something closer to realization, something he had not expected to confront tonight. "Olivia," he said, his voice softer now, more measured. "You are overreacting. What I said earlier, it was exactly what you meant," she interrupted, still calm, still steady. "And that is okay." The simplicity of that seemed to unsettle him more than any argument would have. He was used to resistance, to emotion, to something he could push against. This gave him nothing to control. Ethan finally spoke then, his tone even, not confrontational, but clear. "I think you have already said everything you needed to," he said, his eyes meeting Ryan's briefly, not challenging, just final. Ryan straightened slightly, the shift in dynamic unmistakable now. He was no longer leading this interaction. He knew it. Everyone nearby knew it. His gaze returned to Olivia one last time, searching for something familiar, something he could still recognize. But what he found was not the same woman he had dismissed 2 nights ago. She had not become louder. She had not become defensive. She had simply stopped shrinking. "I did not expect this," he admitted quietly. Olivia gave a small, composed nod. "Neither did I," she said. There was no bitterness in her voice. No need for it. Ryan exhaled slowly, then stepped back, the conversation ending not with a final word, but with a quiet understanding that whatever he had assumed about her no longer applied. As he turned and walked away, the shift completed itself. The room did not explode into reaction. It did something more subtle. It recalibrated. Olivia stood there for a second longer, feeling it settle, feeling the absence of something that had been weighing on her for longer than she realized. Then she turned slightly toward Ethan, her voice quieter now, more grounded. "Was that part of the plan?" she asked. Ethan looked at her, his expression unchanged, but his answer came without hesitation. "No," he said. "That was you." And for the first time that night, Olivia believed it. For a few seconds after Ryan walked away, the air felt different, like something invisible had been cleared out, leaving space behind. Olivia did not rush to move. She let the moment settle, let the quiet realization sink deeper than the noise around her. It was not victory in the way she used to imagine it. It was not loud, not dramatic. It was steady, clean, and somehow more powerful than anything she could have said 2 nights ago. "You just shifted more than you realize," Ethan said beside her, his voice low but certain. Olivia glanced at him, then back at the room. Conversations had resumed, but not in the same way. There was a new tone now, a different kind of attention. People were not just noticing her anymore. They were reassessing. "I think they already decided what to think before I even walked in," she said quietly. "They did," Ethan replied. "And now they are adjusting." She let out a small breath, her fingers brushing lightly against the ring as if confirming it was still there. "Is that enough for your deal?" she asked. Ethan did not answer immediately. His eyes moved across the room, observing, calculating in a way that seemed almost effortless. Then he nodded once. "It is more than enough," he said. Before she could respond, Daniel Foster reappeared, this time with a different energy. Less guarded. More direct. "Ethan," he said, extending his hand again, but this time there was no hesitation. "I think we should finalize our discussion." Ethan shook his hand, calm as ever. "I agree." Daniel's gaze shifted briefly to Olivia, and there was something new there. Not curiosity this time. Respect. "You have a remarkable partner," he said. Olivia met his eyes, steady but unassuming. "I appreciate that," she replied. The exchange was brief, but the impact was not. As Daniel stepped aside to allow them to move toward a quieter section of the room, Olivia felt it clearly now. This was the turning point. Not just for Ethan's deal, but for something deeper she had not fully understood until now. They stopped near a private seating area, away from the center of attention but still visible enough to matter. Ethan turned slightly toward her, his expression unchanged but his focus sharper. "From this point on, the narrative holds," he said. "No second guessing. No hesitation." Olivia nodded, but her thoughts were already shifting somewhere else. "Can I ask you something?" she said. Ethan gave a small nod. "You already are." She hesitated for just a fraction of a second, then continued. "When this is over, do they go back to seeing me the way they did before?" Ethan looked at her, really looked this time, not as part of a plan, not as a calculated variable, but as someone standing at a threshold. "That depends," he said. "On what?" Olivia asked. "On whether you do," he replied. The answer landed quietly, but it stayed. Olivia looked down for a moment, her reflection faint in the polished surface of the table beside them. Then she straightened again, her shoulders settling into something that felt less like effort and more like certainty. Across the room, she caught a glimpse of Ryan again, standing slightly apart now, speaking but not quite engaged, his attention drifting back toward her more often than he probably intended. She did not hold his gaze this time. She did not need to. Instead, she turned back to Ethan just as Daniel returned with a folder in hand, the final details ready to be confirmed. "Everything is prepared," Daniel said. Ethan took the folder, flipping it open briefly before nodding once. "Then let us proceed." As they moved into discussion, Olivia remained beside him, not speaking unless needed, not inserting herself unnecessarily, but fully present. And that presence alone shifted the balance in a way no words could have done. When the final agreement was reached, it happened without fanfare. A handshake. A quiet confirmation. But the weight of it was unmistakable. Daniel smiled, satisfied. "I look forward to working with you," he said. Then, after a brief pause, he added, "Both of you." As he walked away, Ethan closed the folder and exhaled slowly, the first real sign of release Olivia had seen from him all night. He turned to her, his voice quieter now. "It is done." Olivia nodded, absorbing the simplicity of it, the way something so significant could conclude so quietly. "So that is it?" she asked. Ethan studied her for a second, then shook his head slightly. "For the deal," he said. "Yes." A pause. Then, more thoughtfully, "For everything else, not quite." Olivia felt that shift again, subtle but undeniable, as if the line between what was planned and what was real had just blurred in a way neither of them had expected. And this time, she did not step back from it. The drive back was quieter than before, but this time the silence carried something different. It was no longer filled with uncertainty or anticipation. It was settled. Earned. Olivia sat beside Ethan, her gaze drifting between the city lights and the reflection in the window, the same reflection that felt unfamiliar just days ago, now holding something steadier, something grounded. Her hand rested lightly against her lap, the ring still catching the soft glow from passing streetlights. She was not staring at it anymore. She did not need to. "You held your position," Ethan said finally, breaking the silence without looking at her. Olivia turned slightly, her expression calm. "I did what you asked." Ethan shook his head once. "No," he said. "You did more than that." She studied him for a moment, then looked forward again. "It did not feel like more." "That is because it is becoming natural," he replied. The car slowed to a stop outside her building, a modest structure that stood in quiet contrast to everything they had just left behind. For a brief moment, neither of them moved. Olivia glanced at the entrance, then back at him. "This is where it ends, right?" she asked. Ethan finally turned toward her, his gaze steady but different now, less calculated, more present. "That was the agreement," he said. She nodded slowly, absorbing it. For weeks had not passed yet, but something about tonight had accelerated everything. The deal was done. The purpose fulfilled. The lines were no longer as clear as they had been when she first signed that contract. Olivia reached for the door handle, then paused. She looked down at the ring, her fingers brushing against it once more before she slipped it off carefully. The movement was slow, deliberate, not hesitant, but thoughtful. She held it in her palm for a second, then turned back to Ethan and extended her hand. "Then I should probably return this," she said softly. Ethan did not take it immediately. His eyes dropped briefly to the ring, then lifted back to her face. "That depends," he said. Olivia's brow furrowed slightly. "On what?" "On whether you think it only belonged to the contract," he replied. The words settled between them, quiet but undeniable. Olivia held his gaze, searching for the same certainty she had seen from him all night, but this time what she found was something else. Something less guarded. More honest. "And if I do not?" she asked. Ethan exhaled slowly, as if choosing his next words with more care than usual. "Then it means this stopped being strategy somewhere along the way," he said. The simplicity of it made it harder to ignore. Olivia looked down at the ring again, then back at him. For a moment, she thought about the version of herself from just a few days ago. The one who would have handed it back without question. The one who believed she had to earn a place in a room like his. That version of her felt distant now. Not gone. But changed. You said something earlier, she said quietly. About no one getting to call me nothing. Ethan nodded slightly. I meant it. Olivia let out a soft breath, her fingers closing gently around the ring again, but this time she did not extend it back to him. Instead, she held it between them, the decision no longer about the contract, but about something she was choosing for herself. Then maybe this was never about pretending, she said. Maybe it was about finally seeing what I should not have questioned in the first place. Ethan watched her, the silence stretching just long enough to matter. Then, slowly, he reached forward, not to take the ring, but to guide her hand back toward her. Then keep it, he said.